bad.
What's up, everybody? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. I always struggle to say my own title. Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. And we have a great episode for you today. Returning guest Matt Farah, host of the Smoking Tire Podcast, host of the Watch and Listen Podcast. He hosted Drive on NBS Sports. He's done a bunch of stuff. He's been on the Joe Rogan Podcast. I know Joe Rogan and I have a lot of crossover fans, so check that out. Like I said, he's a returning guest, so you can go in our archives and check out the last time he was on. We talk a lot about his new endeavor, Westside Collector Car Storage. Typically, these shows, as you know, they're very casual. We go everywhere and anywhere, so the whole show is not just about cars. I think that's one of the things people like about this show is that, I guess not on purpose, but I get the guests to talk about things that they're not normally used to hearing them discuss, because it's so casual and I kind of go wherever the conversation goes. And if you want to support the show, in the show description on our YouTube channel, I always have links to all our guests' stuff, their social media sites and all that. But I also have links to my Patreon page, my music, which is another way of supporting the show. If you want to purchase the Theory 6 music, which is my solo project, that helps with supporting the show. And I know that's been kind of neglected for a while, but this podcast has been so much fun and I'm so limited with time and energy that this podcast has kind of been my focus for a few years now. But either way, the music's still available if you want to help. If you guys want to watch Matt and I have a conversation, then go on our YouTube channel, RV Theory 6, or look up the Ripple Effect Podcast and you can see it. The other ones that when the guests don't call in using video, you'll just see the episode artwork. You can listen to it on YouTube, even though there's tons of censorship going on YouTube. I put it up there because I'm hoping that as many platforms that I have the podcast available, the likelihood of somebody running into it, or if I'm lucky, maybe having YouTube or whatever suggest one of my episodes, might help expose people to the Ripple Effect Podcast. So thanks again for everybody, for all the support. I've been getting a lot of people hitting me up about the last podcast I did with Whitney Webb on the Jeffrey Epstein story. People really seem to like that, and I think we went really deep into the story, and still there was a lot that we haven't covered. So hopefully I will be putting out another episode with Whitney Webb in the near future in regards to covering some of the stuff we didn't cover and any new information she might have uncovered since that episode. Also, I have my 200th episode coming up around the corner too. This month's the 6-year anniversary of the Ripple Effect Podcast. So if anybody has any suggestions on what I should do for my 200th episode, on my Twitter account, I put out a survey if you guys wanted me to do, one of 3 things. So check that out on Twitter. Give me your vote, and we'll go from there. So thanks again, guys. I will try to cut this now so this isn't too long of an intro, and I'll talk to you guys on the next one. Peace.
What's going on? How are you?
Good.
All right.
I think we're good to go. I hear you. You hear me. It's
Yeah.
up to you. We can do audio or video, whatever you prefer.
Do you need video for your show?
No, we don't. No, because most people, I mean, as you know, with podcasts, is most people listen to them. Especially the long form podcasts like ours. So
I got you.
But the video is all preference. I mean, I've actually had to call people phone lines. Some people prefer phone lines, believe it or not. Still do the landline thing. But I just got out of work, and I work construction, which you're pretty familiar with of late.
Too familiar, bro. Too familiar.
Yeah, I wanted to get into that a little bit. Your building looks absolutely amazing with the pictures I've seen and the videos you've done. It's amazing how I'm always curious. I'm like, is this construction stuff all stuff that Matt's picked up in the process, or were you pretty knowledgeable with it prior to that?
No, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything at all. I've had to learn everything about this building from building this building, and it's been a very insane learning experience because building in Los Angeles is by far the hardest place in America to build anything, especially if you're trying to build something for cars. They really, the city just does not want you doing that, and they can't determine that you can't do it, but they can make it really, really, really hard. And so they have made it really hard, and I've had to figure out how to navigate each of these sets of regulations. And in order to just be compliant, I mean, it's not even about going ridiculously above and beyond the regulations. I mean, just to be compliant in the regulations results in you building a building that is so strong and durable and heavy duty and ridiculous that most people are just completely dumbfounded by it,
Yeah, that's something you see a lot in construction. Is sometimes over designing or overkill with certain things, and it's weird because I always have this like just conflicting philosophy internally, like what makes most sense. Is there? I mean, there are obviously some positives in the fact that there's certifications and there's there's inspectors that you have to make happy,
right,
and all these.
Right.
But does it get to the point where it hurts business and it's overkill? It's
It only gets to the point where it hurts business. Like, look, LA has to deal with earthquakes. We have to deal with fires. We have to deal with heat. We have to deal with dust. Dust doesn't matter for construction, but it matters if you're storing cars. And so we have to deal with the fact that our city doesn't have a proper sewer system. They have storm drains, which are different from sewers because they actually just run the water along the street itself into sort of a canal like you remembered from Terminator 2, as opposed to having underground sewer systems. And so part of what you have to do as a business owner, the city demands that you do as a business owner, is take responsibility for certain things. The water that lands on your property from the sky. Take responsibility for the fact that, if you're going to have these heavy cars and all this stuff, that there's not going to be a fire. And if there is a fire, that they can get to it in a certain way to put it out. And it's a tough environment to build in. I mean, I imagine if we were building this in New Orleans or if we were building this in Florida, there would be hurricane considerations, although it's Florida, so maybe not. So LA is incredibly restrictive. Now, to your point, does it hurt business? It hurts business in terms of the fact that it takes longer to build. It takes much more capital. It takes much more time investment. On the other hand, you can charge more. I'm charging like $600 a month to get in the building. Whereas if you were to build a warehouse, even if you go down to Orange County, I mean, you go down to Orange County, which is just the county south of LA County. If you leave LA County and just go 20 or 30 miles from here, anyone could just buy a warehouse and fill it with cars. And because of that, the market price there is like $200 a month and not $600. And so, a lot of people who watch my videos are like, lefty liberal, it must be nice to be a liberal now, right? They make it hard to build. It's like, I'm really not complaining, actually. I mean, there are some things in the building code that I think are kind of dumb. There are some interpretations of the building code that I think are kind of dumb. And like anything else, a lot of your success or failure has to do with the mood of the person in the office that you deal with on that day, more so than the actual written regulation. I mean, same as if you go to the DMV or if you're at a hospital, the level of care that you're getting is resulting from one guy, not necessarily a policy, or it's a combination of the two. But so I think the regulations are tough. The building is annoying. But it is an incredible sense of an accomplishment to navigate those processes successfully and build something that people pretty much said couldn't be built. and then the idea is that I fill it with cars and have a business, and I prove the hypothesis that premium parking for collector cars in West LA is something that is needed and worthwhile.
Yeah, it's just going through the video, just like things, because actually what we do road construction, and we do concrete work and curb work and stuff like that. And I remember in one of the videos I watched, you were talking about how there's no air bubbles in the concrete, and I'm like, holy shit, Matt's like, the fact that Matt even picked up on that, and like, you know, is like, you could tell like, oh, this means it was good work. And you're talking about how they, you know, the vibrator to bring the concrete down and all this stuff. I'm like, Matt doesn't sound like a car guy. He sounds like a construction guy. Like it's pretty insane.
You know, I've been dealing with a lot of construction guys. I have a great team. I have some really smart architects. I have some really smart contractors. My site super is amazing. The one who's actually on the ground there every day. And I think, and a lot of these guys who work on this project are really passionate about it, because it's not just a normal building. It's a building that is, you know, singularly driven by my desire to have the best one of these kinds of places anywhere. And I think overcoming those challenges is really satisfying for them. You know, you mentioned you do roads and stuff. My super primarily builds bridges and hospitals, which are the two strongest things that they build in America. The regulations on building a hospital are extraordinary. Because in natural disasters, you often can't get people out. And so the building itself has to survive the natural disaster. That's the science, or the rationale there. So, you know, when I've got a guy who spent 25 years building bridges and hospitals going, you know, I ain't never seen no concrete like this before, you know, and explaining to me why this concrete, you know, it's I only know what I know, and I'm able to regurgitate it in a video because someone very smart taught it to me. You know, and I cared enough to listen. I'm not a genius, and I don't know a lot about construction. I'm learning as I go, but I have a lot of really smart people who want me to succeed, and they're giving me the information that I guess I'm retaining enough to sound like I know what I'm talking about. At least.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we all do, more or less. But it's yeah, I mean, I think somebody like yourself, or you know, who you're into so many different things, you can't be as construction savvy and knowledgeable as somebody who's like just balls deep in construction.
No.
You know, but you need those people. You need those people who get obsessive. You know, it's like your watch and listen podcast. You know, I know you just did kind of a final episode recently.
Yeah.
And you know, similar type thing. Like, you're into so many things that you just, your co-host, a guy, you know, he just knows his stuff. You know,
right.
he's so geeky about that stuff, and it's awesome. And those are the type of people that, you know, you ask them questions, and you try to like you said, you try to be a sponge and hold on to as much information as possible. You need those people who are really obsessed with that one topic. But it was amazing to me how much of your garage was thought out. Everything from, you know, the cleaning the water, you know, instead of putting it on the top floor, you know, you put the plant beds and stuff on the bottom, and you know, all those type of loops that you had to jump through. And just everything from like how you're gonna move the cars to how you're gonna, you know, I guess just take advantage of any inconveniences, like which cars are gonna be moved most, which ones are gonna be, all that type of stuff. I mean, it was surreal. And then the EV, you know, some electric vehicles, right? So you had to kind of.
I mean, some of this stuff is regulation driven, right? The thing you talked about with the planters, what you were referring to there is something called low impact development, where if you're building a building in Los Angeles, you are responsible for filtering the rainwater that lands on your building. You have to capture it on your roof, on your driveway, on your property, and then drain it and filter it through approved planters. And the planters have to be a certain square footage compared to the square footage of the building, and blah blah blah. You know, so there's stuff like that, and stuff for earthquakes, and stuff for fire standards, and stuff for you know, the weight. You know, we're the first people to ever put quad stackers over a basement before, and we are putting 18 of them over a basement. So just to hold that much weight on an open deck basement is pretty extraordinary. So a lot of firsts happened, and a lot of engineering solutions happened as a direct result of creative navigation of the regulations. I think one of the most interesting things about the building that I don't think the customer will necessarily appreciate or have to appreciate is that we are using literally every single square inch of available space to make this happen. In order to build something like this to the property lines, which is what we've done because the property is only 14,000 square feet. We're storing 130 cars in 14,000 square feet. That's crazy. That's like that. It's 5 vertical, and so basically, I came up. There was a couple things I wanted that specifically where I said, here's in the design. Aside from getting as many cars as we can into this space, and having a bit of an aesthetic to it. Besides that, I wanted the ramp, which I'm very proud of. The ramp down to the basement, the angles on that ramp are extraordinary. That is the most beautiful ramp. If you're into sports cars, that ramp will bring tears to your eyes. It's so great. We've benchmarked all kinds of really low cars, but specifically a Corvette ZR1. If you live in LA, you have to deal with these funky angles all the time. And I said, not at my place. So the ramp to the lower level is a beautiful design. That was important for me. I wanted to have battery tenders at every single space on the property, no matter if they're on the top of the rack or the floor or wherever. So we've got outlets everywhere, including on the racks themselves, and the outlets move up and down with the racks, so you don't have to unplug every car every time to move the racks, which is great. And and I also and the drive-through design. I wanted you to be able to drive a race trailer, not necessarily a semi truck, but like one of those Featherlight standard race trailers or a flatbed directly through the middle of the building and out the other side. And so we did achieve all of those things. And so those are the details that really were impressive to me. The rest of it is me figuring out how to creatively brag about the fact that we met LA code for this.
Yeah, that's
and the code itself is so nuts that just meeting the code results in a bunch of pejorative, craziness.
Well, I know you got a pretty badass elevator in there too, right? I've heard you talk about it.
Yeah, it's a Kone elevator, I think. It's not that there's anything particularly special about the elevator aside from it is the smoothest elevator I have ever been in. I went to test one, and oh my God, I literally have like 3 cats on me right now. I went to test one, and I legitimately, I felt almost like a dog or something because I actually couldn't tell that it had moved, and the door opened and I was on a different floor, and I was absolutely shocked. And it was like the regular, it was like 50% more expensive than a regular elevator. And I was so impressed with my ride that I didn't know happened. It was like time travel or something. And it was so impressive. I was like, fine, take the money. Let's get that. That rules.
Well, probably in the long run, I mean, it just, you have such, you're going to have people there spending money, and you kind of want it to look somewhat fancy, and so you get a cool elevator like that.
It doesn't look any different. It looks exactly the same. There's nothing special about how the elevator looks. It's a totally normal steel door looking. It just you just don't feel it move, which is something I think is really cool. I mean, imagine, it would be like going from driving a semi truck to a Tesla Model S. I mean, that's the kind of difference you're talking about. The jerks of a regular elevator compared to this. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy.
Well, it's cool because you can see your passion for this project, and I think the creativity that it took to make it work and bring it all together, and I think your passion for cars, and I think you're also pretty business savvy, as you could people could probably tell. I think the combination of all of it, just you're kind of the guy to put together a project like this, to kind of be able to accomplish something like this.
Well, it ain't full yet. We'll see. I certainly I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch. I don't want to call it a success. I don't want to do any of that. I really think I looked at what what I think a really well, my cat. Hang on one second.
Yeah, no problem.
Nikki, this is not going to work for me, sweetheart. You need to get out of here. My cat is literally like behind my computer. See, look, this is my new kitten, Nikki, and she's one of my 4 cats, and she's like the cutest, sweetest, but she's teething, and we can't have her. Come on, Conrad, let's get it. And then Conrad is going there. They can go play up there. All right. I'm sorry to ruin your show with my cat stuff.
No, it's all right. Yeah.
I don't want to oversell. It's not a success yet. I have looked at things. For someone who drives other people's cars, I'm remarkably fussy about my own cars. I don't really let people drive my cars. I'm kind of a bitch about where they're parked. I realize that sounds hypocritical. I drive other people's cars for a job, but it's just a thing with me. Like, I'm not perfect, and this is a thing. I'm a bitch about my cars. And so I built a place where someone who is like me, such a bitch about their cars, we can make them happy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Anyone who's very fussy about their cars, they call me and ask how I'm going to take care of their cars. I have answers to their questions. You don't want anyone touching your car? Fine. I have a space for you. You want the cheapest way in the door? I have a space for you.
That's
awesome. You want to keep 10 cars here? I have a space for that where we can put them all together. You know what I mean? So I don't have everything covered. I don't have every possible angle, but I believe that, if you build it, they will come, right? It's I own the land, I own the building. I'm in it for the long haul. This isn't a
lease. Yeah.
This isn't to fill it up the first day with the rock bottom crowd. This is a business where I believe if someone keeps their car or multiple cars or their whole collection with me, if they keep their cars there for a month, they're not leaving. They're gonna see the kind of thing we're offering there, and they're not leaving. And one of the things I hate the most about Instagram, I like a lot about Instagram, but one of the things that I don't like about Instagram, or at least the funny observation about Instagram, is that a watch, a car, a house, and a collector car storage facility are all the same size on Instagram. Instagram is really great at making people recognize things that are very small, right? Like the details of a watch or jewelry or something like that. Instagram is horrible for showing how big something is. And so I find that a lot of people who come to see me at the site and come take tours, because I give tours, when they see it, they go, "Oh my God, dude, this is huge." And I go, I said it was 43 feet tall. And they go, "Yeah, but I didn't really think about how tall 43 feet is." And so a single story building that's 43 feet tall, that's like a Walmart, basically. It's like as tall as a Walmart or a Costco. It's huge.
That's huge.
And so, and with the big vertical columns of the stackers, it almost looks like a cathedral or something. It's really visually very like, oh my God, like what? That people look up. And also the density of the concrete is so apparent. When you look at that concrete that doesn't have the air bubbles in it, and you're down there, and like the way that it actually kind of suppresses echoing a little bit, it's like you can just if you go there, you can just feel the solidness of it, which is something that I think is hard to impress upon people in pictures.
Yeah, there is something about buildings like that, and then just when you look at it and you think about all the manpower, all the forming, rebar, all the work that goes into it, there's just something. There's just something human about it. I mean, it's just like
the rebar guys, especially. Rebar guys are super hardcore.
Yeah,
those guys are nuts. They ruin boots in like 3 days walking around that stuff, and they're tying that rebar up.
Dude.
And it was. Do you do that shit?
We do have to tie. We do a lot, mostly like I said, road construction, so flat work. But we do a lot of retaining walls too, which we'll have to do similar things where we'll have to form it. For the footing, and then we'll have to vibrate the concrete, put the rebar in there, tie it all together. So it's similar stuff, kind of smaller, because this what you're doing is huge. But we've done similar stuff. The
rebar guys, they were incredible, and the shotcrete guys, the guys who did the walls with the shotcrete. The one guy with the fire hose. and then the four guys smoothing after them. Those guys, they were just like a machine. It was amazing. I'm so impressed with how these guys are able to go from, these thousands of drawings to into the real thing, and and able to make it work.
It is pretty fucking wild when you look at like just a project just on paper, and then the fact that they're like you said, thousands of pages of like, oh, these are plans specifically for this type of work, and then this is plans for that. Here's the plans that describe this, and then it's overwhelming. I mean,
And even when you have the plans, what surprises me is when you have the plans, how much it still is done on the fly. You've got a plan, but it's
doesn't always make sense.
It's zoomed. In some cases, it's like it's zoomed out pretty far.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, now, when we actually get to that joint, what do we really do there?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's very interesting, and it's I think in some ways it's similar to how you could design a car. You need maximum passenger compartment, but you need crash safety, but you also need to have the engine somewhere, and and what kind of tires are we going to use, and are we going to use forged wheels or cast wheels, and what is the cost versus the reward here? And I think a lot of that is the same, and so you understand. I think I get from doing this kind of thing maybe a little bit of sympathy for someone like Elon Musk, who's trying to start a new car company when that's really not something that's really done anymore. But at the same time, it makes you want to like crap on Elon Musk for being like, how dare you have that much hubris and not just be like, no, this is going to be hard. Like, you go out there and you're like, no problem, this is easy. But like, that's utter horseshit.
Well, I think that's what pissed off a lot of car makers is the fact that it's like, you're coming in here super arrogant. He's like, we've been doing this for a long time. We know how hard it is. You can't just start a car company overnight and then just think you're going to create this awesome car. And I know you.
Well, you can. I mean, you can, and they could, right? It's not that they can't or that they won't. It's that there's more to it than we're starting a new car company. It's we're a car company, but refusing to admit that you're a car company. Like that constant trope of we're a tech company, not a car company. Well, guess what, asshole? If you can only buy the tech by buying the car around it, you're a fucking car company.
Yeah.
And so to not like the whole thing with their factories and the automation and it's not that if someone says, look, I think we can build a better car, and here's how we're going to do it, and it's going to have a lot of stuff from like smartphones in it, and they're all going to be electric, but they're going to be really good looking, and they're going to make them fast and fun to drive, like, cool, like that's all pretty cool. But it's when you start going, we can build this better, or we can run these companies better than these people who've been doing it for a very long time, and those companies learned a lot of valuable real world lessons.
Yeah.
They actually and GM is a bad example because GM was not always the best run company, but let's go with one that's run a little better. Toyota. Right? Toyota, in general, their record is pretty good. If you buy a Camry, they have made profit on that sale to you. They built, shipped, and got a car to you, and they took more money in than they cost them to do all that. With a Tesla, when they sell you a car, they're losing money on that car. But they are.
But do you think people who buy them almost feel like, oh, this is a example of how he's more passionate about, putting out this technology and changing society than he is trying to make profit? Or do you think it's just a lack of business?
That's ridiculous. We're not talking about the real fucking Tony Stark, homie. We're talking about the guy who started PayPal.
Yeah, no, I get that. So
we're talking about a South African son of a diamond miner who started PayPal. He's not giving the cars away because he's a good person. He's not making profit because his companies run like shit, and it's designed the way tech companies are, which is that you just get more funding every year. That's what they just do. They just get more. They just take on more and more investments every year. There's not a single thing they make that makes a profit. Not one.
So do you think he's solely motivated by ego or by? I know you probably know. Your last time we spoke, I think he was just on the Rogan podcast, and I know we talked about him a little bit. But I know now recently, coincidentally, you just read the book Ludicrous about Tesla.
I did. It's a good book.
Yeah. Which is it out yet? Is it? Or
I think no, it is. Yeah, it's out. It's out. Yeah.
And so what's your opinion after reading that book and just knowing so much about, the car industry and stuff? Do you think cars was even his passion, or was it a money thing? Was it ego?
It's like anything else, right? So people get swept up in shit, right? Him and his buddies back in the day thought they could make an electric sports car that would be cool. All right, that was the plan. That in itself, that one task became very hard, and it turned into a grander plan, right? And it turned into this plan of, we're going to dominate EVs, right? Now, the problem is, because they are a, quote, tech company and not a, quote, manufacturing company, they weren't making money on the products they were building and selling. So the only way to keep the money going was to hype up the next thing and take deposits or investors on it. When you're
a pyramid scheme, almost. It almost sounds like a pyramid scheme. Yeah.
Almost. It is.
It is. Yeah.
Exactly is. It's exactly a pyramid scheme. And if you know what, reading the book Ludicrous, I think, I do want to say that I do think they have advanced EVs in general. I think they've come up with some neat features. I like the idea of a little bit of whimsy in your car, a little bit of whimsy in your car, and the Model S and Model 3 are like good looking, kind of cool cars, right? And when I've driven them, if you go watch my reviews on the Smoking Tire, like, I think I'm pretty objective about the car, regardless of what I think about how the companies run. I think I'm able to talk about the car for the car, and I think you could think the companies run like shit and go buy a car, a Tesla, and those are not necessarily, you can still be ideologically consistent, criticize the company and own one of their cars. I think. But I do think, where I read, in the book, I think it's very obvious that Elon has a lot of passion, but has way too much authority in the company to decide how things go. I think the image they present of themselves outwardly, and the image their rabid fan base runs away with, and the image that is the reality of the company they're running and the cars they're building and the factories they're operating and all that shit, those are not the same reality. They're two different realities. And I think the media has been very complicit, drawing many parallels with Tony Stark and Elon and whatever. And I think Elon is a smart guy, but I don't think he's a super genius. I don't think he gets anywhere near I don't think he deserves near the credit he gets. He hires a lot of smart people who build a lot of cool tech. SpaceX rockets, like, Elon didn't do the fucking trajectories on those. You know what I mean? Like, those are dope. Congratulations. That's amazing. Like, rockets are amazing. Like, but like, all of the love is directed right at him. I almost feel bad for like number 3 and 4 guys at the company. Like, no one has a clue who they are. You know what I mean? And they're actually like doing things every day. And they're like, Elon, get off fucking Twitter. Like,
yeah, but isn't that, you look at Jobs and Gates, I mean, that's kind of the same thing. It's like they weren't necessarily the ones who came up with every great idea or the software or hardware.
I think Steve Jobs gets way too much credit too.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs gets way too much credit, but Steve Jobs, I don't really think, now maybe I'm missing this, but did Steve Jobs ever do a whole lot of over-promising and under-delivering? I don't really think so. I think he would talk about a new product once it was in his hand.
Yeah, I think you're right. That is the thing that pisses people off about
Apple sells things at a profit. You know what I mean? They don't need to keep the investor hype machine going. They just need to build a thing that sells, and then that's the success.
Yeah. Well, they create the thing, the cool thing, then they tell you about it. Where Tesla, they tell you about the cool thing that's not created yet, and then try to sell you it before they actually have it. And like you said, that's how they kind of continue this pyramid scheme. They tell you about the cool thing. Hey, why don't you guys put a bunch of deposit on this, and then we'll use that money to
finish the thing we told you we could already do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't think other companies are necessarily exempt from this type of behavior, but you don't see rabid fan bases on Twitter or wherever jumping and white knighting the shit out of the CEO of the Volkswagen Group or the CEO of GM. You know what I mean? And yet you have these people who like worship at the altar of Elon and no longer see objective reality. And like the real problem with that is that on their own merits, just on their own merits, the cars are so cool. You know what I mean? You could sell them. You could build a luxury product and sell it and make it really well and hire some really talented manufacturing people to tighten up the build quality and whatever. And the cars themselves are so cool. But because the hype machine is what brings in the company's money, not the cars themselves, the hype machine has to be better than the cars. And that's where you get terms like autopilot and full self-drive and the promise of your Model 3 is going to go out and be a robo-taxi before the end of your lease term. Horse shit. That keeps the hype train going. One second, okay? I'm sorry.
No problem. Yeah, no problem.
Hello? You there? Good?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, no, that's you. I'm back. I apologize. My construction site got fucking graffitied last night. And it's not going to be a painted surface. It's bare CMU block. And so I'm really worried because if the paint absorbs into the CMU, we got to get it off. We can't let it sit there.
Yeah, you got to clean it ASAP.
Yeah, so this guy is the sandblaster. We're going to sandblast it off. So he was just over there, and he took a block home, and he's going to test it and call me back. So I apologize, but
no problem.
That one was fucking urgent.
Are you guys keeping everything the color of cement, or you decided to paint it or not paint it? I know that you're kind of...
The block itself is staying block. There's another section of the members lounge, the podcast studio that is an off-white stucco, but that's like wood frame with insulation and stucco. Yeah. It's like a dual method kind of thing.
That's pretty badass. You got your podcast studio in there. You got a little lounge, right?
That's a good one. Yeah, the podcast studio is going over there. Which business wise makes sense because now the Smoking Tire, instead of paying a dentist rent every month, is going to pay me rent. How convenient. I'll be paying myself rent. And so the Smoking Tire is the studio will earn its keep via the Smoking Tire, actually, which is good because I own the Westside Collector Car Storage, not the Smoking Tire, so it's a blah 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 blah, blah whatever. I get kind of a net savings there, which is good. And also, like, it's, I think for some of our members who have signed up already, one of the things they kind of thought was cool is that they get sort of a front row seat to the Smoking Tire podcast. So, the guests from the industry, will be kind of around hanging out. And I think they kind of think that's cool. And we're building a cigar lounge as well. I just bought a Bentley W12 engine block coffee table from England. We were going to make one, but they're actually not that expensive to just buy.
Yeah.
Between finding a block, finishing it, and getting and all that, like, you might as well just buy it.
Just buy one,
it's not that. Yeah. And there's a guy over in England that like makes them with all kinds of different fun engines. I mean, there's like Cosworth V8s and M3 engines and Ferrari engines and all kind of stuff. But the W12 is such a weird and wonky block. I was like, oh, definitely that. That seems cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's cool. So I know you talked about, like, it's not going to be, you're not building it for a place to hang out at, but it like you said, having the podcast studio there, being able to to possibly run into you and the guest hanging out there, whatnot, and it gives the guest. I mean, it gives you, instead of you being like, hey, after the show, do you want to go look at my garage? The guest automatically gets to see the garage because they're going
right. And yeah, and also like our studio now is so shanty. Like it was it was supposed to be a temp studio like 4 years ago, and it's better than my house. Like we used to have guests come to my house, and like I was like, all right, let's get out of the house, you know. And I started this building project 4 years ago, and so we had this temp office, and I thought it would be like a year, but we're like still there, and every time I go there, I just like hate it. But you know, like Jamie Lee Curtis says in Trading Places, it's cheap, it's clean, and it's mine. And so yeah, I mean, I've been able to skate by on that for like 4 years. But like I'm just really excited about having a studio that I'm like actually proud of. You know, that's because we've been podcasting for like 8 years now, and like, okay, come to the house in the beginning, you know, it's just kind of a silly thing, and then it's like, no, we're in like an office building now, like you take me seriously. But it's like, well, the office building is still kind of like shanty, so you can't take me that seriously. I hope, I hope,
especially you, because you do all live, or you do all in-person podcasts, right? I don't recall you ever doing any call-in or Skype
Correct.
with anybody, right? Yeah.
Correct. And if I ever really had to, if there was ever a guest that was such a get that there was no way around it, but I still
Elon Musk.
I would. I don't think that they would like the questions I had for him.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be like Rogan's, really.
Yeah, he was friendly. Yeah. Well, I mean, the whiskey. It is funny. We talked about this last time. How he was drinking whiskey, no big deal, and then he drinks or he smokes a little bit of weed. But it's different because his company's public, and I think that's the thing that bothers me about all this too. Is we know how the stock market can be manipulated and all this stuff, and really.
Didn't he settle with the SEC for stock manipulation? I think he did.
He did. Yes. Yeah. Which is and that's the thing. He's so much in the public eye that he can really control, and then all this like, oh, we're going to come out with this new product and that new product, and he creates all this hype, and that's all you really need to do to sell stocks. And so it does feel like he's kind of manipulating the system a little bit. So I think
mildly Trumpy. It's lightly Trumpy.
Yeah, I heard you make that comparison once, and it's funny because people on the left and people on the right probably both hate that comparison.
They probably do, but I'm not saying like that if you like Elon Musk, you like Donald Trump, but I'm just saying the methodology is awful familiar. That's all.
Yeah. It is weird. Even the whole left and right thing with cars. I had Lauren Fix on not too long ago. I don't know if you know who she is. She's
she's on like Two Girls Garage. Is that her? No.
Yeah.
Is that her?
Is she on Two Girls? She's usually on like a lot of shows like Boom Bust and a lot of talking about the car industry.
I'm just Googling. Like yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I remember we were talking, and she was telling me how like she's like, oh, most car guys are conservative or something. She said something along those lines, and I'm like, I'm not sure car guys have a specific, ideology you can generalize it. I mean, you go to car shows, it's like rarely are people talking about, hey, are you a libertarian? Are you, like you're talking cars,
that's got to be regional. I mean, I think if you're going to a car show in an area where a certain culture prevails, you're going to find that. And if you come to a car show in another area, you're going to find a slightly more masculine, testosterone fueled version of that. I think it's not really common to find a lot of like super progressive people at a car show.
Yeah, that's true.
I think although it's becoming more common in California. I think actually events like Radwood and Luft, I think, are particularly good at drawing a little more diversity, I think. But again, and I'm talking about my own little bubble here. I'm talking about LA stuff. In LA, I'm starting to see a more progressive crowd at car shows as trans people and gay people become more accepted by the sort of hyper masculinity that is the car thing. And I try to do my part to let people in and be inviting wherever I can. You want to take a left for a second? I was at a car show 2 weeks ago, and I interact with a lot of police officers. And I'm not going to say exactly where this car show was, but there was a police officer there in uniform. I don't know if it didn't seem like they were like working, but they were definitely like maintaining a presence, so people didn't do anything too stupid in their cars, right? Which is fine. And overwhelmingly, my interactions with the police, understanding my privilege as best I can, my interactions with the police are generally positive. They watch my videos, they know who I am. Doesn't seem to bother them that I drive a little quick in the canyons. We have a lovely chat about cars for a while, and then we move on. And so that's my experience. I understand that other people's experience is drastically different, but I rarely get to watch that in action. And so I was at this car show, and I was talking to one of a very small number of black people at this car show. There were maybe 3 or 4 black people out of 1,000 that I saw at this show. And one of them was this really nice kid who I had seen him drive in a really, really cool old BMW. Really nice, really, really well modified car, very neat car. And he approached me, and he'd seen me, and we'd chatted and we talked again. And then I saw the cop who I chatted with. He was very nice, and I talked to him. I happened to talk to the cop near this kid's BMW, the black kid's BMW. And the cop starts talking about the car and going, "Oh man, I love those. That's my favorite body style. Like I had an 83, whatever." And I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." Like, I like when the cops are car nerdy a little bit. And we were talking about the inline 6 engines and how I like the inline 6s better than I like the M3's motor and whatever. Well, the black kid who had the car walks up. "Oh, hey, is this your car?" And he's, "Oh, it's my shop. It's the shop's car. I'm driving the shop's car." And the cop says, "Pop the hood. Let me see the motor." Now, I believe that this was an innocent request now, because I know what happened. I believe this was an innocent request by a car enthusiast who wanted to see how this guy's engine was modified. But in California, if a uniformed cop tells you to pop your hood and you do it, and they see something in there that is not smog or CARB certified, they can take your car right there.
It's fucking wild. Ugh.
It's wild. They can take your car, and they can physically have your car taken right there. Or more likely is they send you to the ref, and the ref is someone whose job it is to make sure your car is stock. Jesus. And it's basically just like the death wish for if you have a super modified car. And if this fool's car got refed, dunzo. This was a dunzo if it got refed. Okay, so the cop goes, "Pop the hood." Now I'm standing there and I go, "Oh, I look at the kid and go, oh no, he didn't just say that." Because we both know there's some shit under that hood.
Yeah, it's not stock.
But I know there's something. And you've got a white cop in uniform asking a young black kid, the only young black kid at a car show full of fucking supercars. There's McLarens up the ass, this place. Huracans left and right. Here's the oldest BMW being driven by a young black kid. Now, again, I'm not saying this cop was racist in doing this. And in fact, as it turns out, he actually really did just want to see the engine talk about E30s. But the kid looked at me like, "Farah, what do I do?" And I straight up said, "Don't open your hood. Nope, don't do it." And the cop was like, "Matt, dude, I'm just trying to look at this car." And I said to the cop, I was like, "You got to understand the situation you have just set up here. You have asked in a friendly way to someone who reads in the news about cops shooting black kids. You've basically asked permission to do something that would then give you the right to take his car from him. And you do it in this friendly, like, no, I'm your boy way. When, like, maybe he is your boy, or like maybe he's not. He's just a great actor and a great liar, you know? And I told the kid to not pop his hood. And the kid didn't pop his hood. And the cop reached in the car and popped the hood.
What?
Himself.
Wait, there has to be some rules that yeah, you can't do that.
I don't know. I mean, I imagine there probably is a rule against that.
Yeah, because
there probably is a rule against
technically
that.
That's private property.
If he actually wanted to bust the kid, I would bet that is not something that would be admissible. But he didn't. He really did just want to see the engine. But just watching him reach in and pop the hood, and then seeing what it was, which was a certainly not fucking carb legal engine. It was an engine swap. It wasn't even the stock engine. And they ended up talking about E30s for a while, and it ended up fine. But I've been thinking about that for a couple of weeks, because I've been thinking about what it would be like to be that kid and have this cop in a friendly place not pull you over. You're parked at a car show, surrounded by other modified cars, surrounded by white people, and you're the black kid who's got to pop his hood, and he might lose his car. That just stuck with me, like the visual of that kid's face when the cop reached in to pop the hood. You know what I mean? It was like.
Well, like, you just know how bad that could turn out. It's funny because we went to a car show yesterday, or Sunday. I don't even know what day it is. It's Sunday, and we had we're going through this town. It's in this town, Agawam, Feeding Hills, in Massachusetts, not too far from where we live. And my brother and I, we grew up playing basketball, and we're from a town called Ludlow, which is mostly a lot of like Portuguese and Polish immigrants. But growing up playing basketball, we play a lot in Chicopee and Springfield and stuff like that. So we have a lot of black friends, and we happen to have a lot of black friends that also like cars. So we're all cruising to the car show, and my buddy Sean's like, hey, maybe I shouldn't be in the front of the line. And we're like, why? He's like, because I'm in a blacked out Chrysler 300, and I'm black. And I'm like, and we're laughing about it. But it's funny.
They call it a DWB. In California, there's a running joke. It's called a DWB. It's a driving while black.
Yeah.
It's sad that's a joke, but my friends make that fucking.
That's kind of what I'm getting to, is that we kind of like laughed it off, and we're like, we'll drive in the back or whatever. But we're laughing it off, because Agawam's a mostly white, town. But it's funny because nothing serious happened. But like when something like this person has to deal with, or every person has to deal with being a minority and being treated as that, and stuff that, like you said, you see in the news. I mean, look at the Eric Gardner thing. I mean, the fact that I've gotten in debates with people that I'm looking at them and I'm just like, I cannot believe you're fucking justifying these actions. Like, I don't care where you like, one of my best friends is a cop. I'm just putting it out there. Like, he literally, like, one of my best friends is a cop. And at my wedding, my brother was my best man. But if I didn't have a brother, this dude would be my best man. And we talk about this shit all the time, and it's even him, he'll get a little defensive about like defending police officers, and I'm like, I'll tell him, like, listen, I'm like, it's because your interaction with these guys are different. Like, it's all about perspective. Like, it's not.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to see, that other people, just because, like, if you don't experience racism in your life doesn't mean it doesn't exist. If you don't, it's to really kind of think about what it's like from the people's perspective that receive the shit end of these sticks a lot,
Well, remember that movie Crash? It was a great movie because they
really crammed it down your throat in that movie.
Yeah, they did. But I think it was great because I think the reason why that movie was important, because it reminded you that even the people that could be being judged, or there could be some racism thrown their way, that we can all look in the mirror and be like, okay, we're all kind of a little bit unfair to somebody who's different than us. It doesn't matter if it's because it's a different religion, or if it's a different nationality, or you're from a different country. It's he's Russian, so he must be a drunk, or crazy, or he's, it's like we all and we can all do a better job of doing that, of saying, let me not prejudge somebody based on, maybe something that I'm seeing from the outside before I get I've met tons of people that initially I'm like, this person without a doubt is going to be a douchebag, and then I get to know them. I'm like, holy shit, I feel really bad that I thought
people say that about me a lot.
Well, you have
people
enough.
Like, no, you're not an asshole.
I guess that's a compliment, right?
I guess I don't know when they thought I was an asshole before.
But I think the cool thing about cars, we talked about music last time you were on here. You're a big Pearl Jam fan. My son actually went to his first concert. We just saw Iron Maiden here in Massachusetts. Yeah, that was it was a good
first concert.
Actually, it was the first time I've ever seen him too. So, and I love Iron Maiden. My first album was Peace of Mind when I was a kid. And I had the Trooper shirt, so I got him as matching Trooper shirt, and it was just awesome to go to. He's only 4, so he was the youngest kid there. All the drunk Iron Maiden fans were like, "Oh, this is awesome! Keep metal alive!" All this stuff. So it was cool. But it was the cool thing about going, cars and concert is like when we go to a concert and we're some other, parents are coming up to me talking about they're bringing their kids to first. Like, we don't care about these other things. I don't care like what skin color you are or what nationality you are or all these things that we use to separate ourselves. Same thing with a car show. You go to a car show, you're talking to people, you're talking to Asian people, you're talking to European people, you're talking to whoever, and if you like cars, it's like, oh, you're a BMW guy. It's not like a BMW guy or a Jag guy has a certain look. It's just
it's actually funny. It's funny you mentioned that. I think they do.
Well, a little bit.
I mean, if I go to, but I live in an exaggerated city. You know what I mean? I think if you look at the kind of guy who's modifying an E36 or modifying a 190E Cosworth, that guy is not different. But the guy who drives the brand new McLaren versus the guy who drives the brand new Aventador, that's a different uniform.
That is true, because I remember a couple years ago I went to a Jag car show, and I got into Jags a couple years ago, and I love cars that have some history to it and stuff like that. So I really got really deep into it and stuff. And I went to this Jag car show, and I'm like thinking to myself, what type of people am I going to see? Like, who these guys who have these old E-types and stuff like that. And it was a bunch of guys wearing like these hats, playing cards and smoking cigars, and I'm like, that's kind of what I expected. It was kind of, older dudes. I was the youngest dude there. And it was all these old classic Jags, but I don't mind because I'm a whiskey. Even though like I'm a health nut, my one vice is whiskey.
A Jaguar is like you got to dress like you're going on a quail hunt.
Yeah, you kind of. But you know what I love about Jags, and we talked. I heard you talk about this with the I-Pace, is the fact that there's something about certain cars. I know recently you've did a video on the Range Rover SVR and the F-Pace SVR.
Yeah,
and there's something about, like, when I remember the first time I drove a Jag, I'm like, holy shit, like, you can kind of tell these cars were like tuned in the windy back roads of England, and like they're fun to drive. And I remember, like, in general
they are. My good chassis control for a lot of them.
I had a XFR was my first Jag, and it was all blacked out.
Right?
Yeah, we had the LED, the LED daytime running lights. It was all they had the whole.
Cool. Yeah, they were nice back when like they hadn't been making them for like 16 years.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that's one thing.
Still making that?
Yeah, now they make the XF, but they don't make the XFR anymore. Yeah, they make the XFS and some of the other things. Yeah, well, look, I have an XJR now. So you want to talk about a design that hasn't changed? Yeah. I mean, they literally have been. Cool. Yeah, no, I love it because I have kids, so I'm like, I can fit my kids easily in the back. And
wait, do you have the current one or the old one?
I have actually, I'm a little jealous of the newer ones. I have a 2014. But so they changed the headlights in 16, and I'm like, fuck, I want those headlights because for some reason.
No, but it's not like the old school looking
one.
Oh no,
it's not like it's no, it's 4,100 pounds. Like I tell people, I'm like it's actually lighter than my XFR, and it's faster, even though it's bigger, and 550 horsepower, and But yeah, it's a cool car. But even like for such a big car, you put in dynamic mode, you put in sport, it's still fun. Like you can tell like there's some charm to it. And like I've talked to a couple friends of mine about cars, and you can read all the reviews you want or whatnot. But if you hop in a car and there's something you like, we have a buddy that was with me yesterday, Eddie, and he's a huge Mustang guy. He has a Fox body, and he'll be parked next to all these modern, beautiful, big, expensive cars, and his Fox body will just get all the attention. And you're a Mustang guy. You've had a couple.
Well, it's not just that it was a Fox body. It's that I think if you're talking about being appreciated by people, something built at a car show, especially a car show like in LA where I live, will not get as much love as, or will get more, something built will get more love than, another Skittles colored Huracan or whatever. Certainly, my 911 gets more love than any number of fucking GT3s that show up to stuff. And at all of those Orange County shows I go to with the Countach, I mean, Countach is fucking game over. I mean, you park a Countach next to a row of Sennas and Koenigseggs, and the Countach wins.
Well, I almost feel like a cool car never really stops being cool. Like it's always cool forever. You see, even like my brother's had, when we were growing up, one of his cars he had was a 300 ZX, and you see one now and you're like, it's still a cool looking fucking car. And you think about that, it was designed in 1990. And
some are the 90s cars. A lot of them, I think, have
stood the test of time.
The really well designed ones have aged well. I think almost everything from the 70s and 80s had a real minimum cool to the curve.
Yeah,
and then only came back by hanging a left through ironic cool into full cool.
Isn't it funny how some of those 80s cars are like expensive now? I'm like,
well, they get expensive the second people realize that there actually aren't any left. When it's like, oh, I could get one if I wanted one of those. Wait a minute, I do want one of those. How much is one of the? Wait,
yeah,
I think a lot of that stuff. If you kept a Toyota pickup truck real nice, things that were well made and things that were reliable, I think have retained their value really well. Like the 911s especially are, because they're so they're not reliable, but they are durable. Meaning the repairs are expensive and all, but like if you service and maintain an old 80s 911 properly, like it will last 1,000 years. Like it will literally, it's a galvanized fucking body, and it won't really rust, and the motors are so tough that they'll go for 1,000,000 miles if you service them properly. So I think that things that were made well, I mean, Fox bodies, the panel gaps weren't very good, but they're actually quite robustly made, so those are, and I think Fox bodies are a great example. We haven't gotten there yet. They're starting to become really cool again, and the Cobras are starting to be really expensive. They made so many of them that they probably will never be huge money, but eventually it's going to be really hard to find a great one. And that happened to me with my SL 500. I wanted a Mercedes SL 500 daily driver, and seems like they made a lot of those R129s. How hard could that be? You drive around any city in America and you see a dozen of them a day. You know what I mean? And then you look for one that's good enough to buy, and turns out every single one of them cars you saw on the street that day had mad problems. And actually finding like a good one, for me, it took like 5 months to find a decent R129 worth buying. And even then, when I bought it needed $1,200 worth of shit and tires. So it's things that were well made and were used and sort of discarded because they weren't considered special enough You know, certain things were always special, right? E30 M3s, you know, AMG Hammers. Like, okay, those are things that, although E30 M3s did go through a minimum dip, actually, that's maybe a bad example, but the lesser, like now, like BMW 325i's, like E30 325i's, like went from 15 to 25 grand, you know, for a great one. You know, and I think cars that are simple, small, analog, and engaging, and also you know, reliable and well made enough that they can be used on modern roads and modern traffic. I think the best thing about cars from the 80s and 90s that separates from cars of the 60s and 70s is, you know, you can daily an 80s car, you can daily a 90s car. Like, there might be some bits of sacrifice here and there. It's not as refined as the newest stuff, but like, I daily an 87 911. Like, I don't get like stranded. It's like, it's fine. It works. It's a car. Like, I just bought our new daily is going to be a 91 Mitsubishi Delica van that I bought with 20,000 miles on it. And like, everything works. Like, I plan to daily it. Like, you know, like I think cars from the 90s and stuff like that, I think are well enough made and modern enough that even just add Bluetooth and change the oil pretty much. And if you bought a decent one, you know, you can daily drive that car almost indefinitely. And so to me, a lot of that is it's rewarding to keep cars like that on the road. I think it's fun. You know, the cars they're a little bit of a different size, and I like that. You know, I like cars that are sized from the 90s. Like, there are a lot of cars have gotten too big.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, and I think there's, you know, the thing about the 90s cars too is the interiors, obviously, and I think you could probably say that about any car. The interiors don't age quite as well as the exteriors. You know, the exteriors definitely still, you know, you get a RX-7 or Supra or whatever, you know, it doesn't look like an old car driving on the road. But you get inside it, and then it looks like, oh, this is a F-150. This is
well, that's why I like the 911 a lot, because it looks, they basically stopped styling that car at from the 60s to like 98. You know what I mean? But they screwed it together really, really tight, really tight. And so even if it's not fancy, the quality of the leather is really high. The dye is full grain. It's nice and deep, good dye in the leather. And the cars don't fucking rattle. Like, they just don't. Like, they're just screwed together tighter. And so, you know, it's so funny because in the 90s, all the car magazines and whatever would like shit on the 993 because it was like old, you know, and they weren't doing the new style. And now what everybody wants is that 993, like, because it was reliable enough to be sold as a new Porsche in 1998, and yet you basically got an improved car from the 60s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's like why the 993 is so great, because it feels almost like driving that car from the 60s, almost, but you can have the air conditioning on like all the time. You know, and you can have like a button to lock and unlock the doors, you know, like some basic shit that makes your life easier on a day-to-day basis. And the rest of it feels exactly the same as my 87 or a car from the 70s or one from the 60s, you know what I mean, in all the ways that matter.
But you're right about, like, there's only a couple features that like are must-haves, you know, and it's really a lot of the other stuff is just, yeah, it's great if you have it, but if you don't have it, it's not the end of the world. So you get an older car, yeah, it's livable. I mean, the Bluetooth, I mean, you can always get like those little Bluetooth modules go into auxiliary.
Bluetooth is so easy, dude.
Yeah.
I put Clarion stereos in my car. It's got Bluetooth. Like, it works as well as any factory stereo. Like, that's not a big deal. The things that I miss are, like, with the 911, like, I have to lock and unlock it with the actual key. That's annoying. I wish I had a button of something. That one, the 911 specifically, because mine is hot rodded, has to like warm up a little bit when it's cold. Whereas like a brand new car, it's like power,
go.
You know what I mean? And I kind of care. And also the older cars, you can actually, the air conditioning works, but you can, unless you have a very powerful older car, you can really feel it take the horsepower away. On my 911, I can definitely feel the difference in power running the air conditioner or versus not running the air conditioner. And so it changes the throttle response and stuff like that too. And so there are times when I'm like hot and will not turn the air conditioner on because I've decided that right now I prefer throttle response to being cool, which in a daily driver is fucking stupid, right? Like you should be able to make it whatever temperature you want, like guilt-free, like not compromise-free. So that to me is the only reason to like, and I think that's a 911 thing because that was already an old ass design, but like, oh Jesus, my chair just got really low. And but yeah, you don't want to drive a car where the air conditioning really sucks noticeable power away. That's kind of the one thing I think would be kind of a bummer about driving old cars. But the more powerful the car, the less a problem it is. Yeah. In my Lambo, I can't tell. In the Countach, when I turn the air conditioning on, it doesn't make a difference at all. In power wise.
Really?
Yeah. No, really. Yeah. I mean, it's 450 horsepower. Like maybe it makes a difference, but like
you're going to notice it. Yeah.
I can't tell driving around.
Unless you're timing it or whatnot. Yeah, that's
I'm sure it would make a difference on a racetrack. It doesn't make a difference in my everyday life. And in fact, if modern sports cars, when I go on the racetrack, I run the air conditioner on full crank the whole time. I don't give a shit. I mean, even if I'm running a lap timer, like I don't care. I'm running the air conditioning. If I'm uncomfortable, like I'm not, obviously only if it's like really hot at the racetrack. But like for instance, when I do videos, I have to have the windows up where possible. So I'll run the air conditioner on that. But it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Matt. I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy dude. Sure. You got some. Oh
shit.
But well, yeah. I figured But thank you so much, man. I really appreciate your time. We'll definitely have to catch up again. There's a bunch of stuff that I wanted to hit on, but we didn't get to. But that's what I love about these podcasts for casual. Wherever they go, they go. But thanks again, and good luck with everything, man. I mean,
no problem.
I love hearing your passion about your garage and being a car person and like I said, I think you're going to be the Elon Musk bad example of garage storage.
No, I'm going to be honest about my product.
Yeah,
my product is not. I'm not going to tell you my product is cooler than it really is. I'm only going to tell you factually cool things.
Yeah, and it being successful for fans of yours, it's only going to help the podcasting and all of your videos because you're going to have more financial freedom. So
that's the idea, right? The idea is to not be financially dependent on YouTube, right? Because it's YouTube is a wonderful thing, right? It allows people to create a media empire, but it also you are a slave to their rules. You know what I mean? You're creating an empire in a rental apartment, not in a building you own. And unfortunately, as great as YouTube is for creating to earn a living, and if you can figure it out, it is great. But you don't want to be a slave to them forever. So the most important thing, just like in a casino, I'll leave you with this. You haven't actually won anything in a casino until you cash out and go home.
Yeah.
And so the most important thing to making a living on the internet is to get your fucking money off the internet as quickly as you possibly can and put it into something real. That is just my personal strategy. So not everybody will agree with me, but that's what I do.
Well, you see now a lot of people who are, being demonetized on YouTube. If they weren't so dependent on YouTube, it wouldn't have been an issue. So, I mean,
I think people do a good job. I mean, a lot of the guys I know who do YouTube, they diversify. They do merch. They do a line of products of whatever, or they, like we do. I do the podcast. I do writing. I sell T-shirts, and you try and diversify and reduce your dependence on YouTube money as much as you can. And I think we've been pretty successful at that. But I want to reduce my dependence on it to fucking zero.
Yeah.
So here we are.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, hopefully eventually you'll have FU money and then you do whatever the hell you want.
Right. We'll see.
Hey, thanks, Matt. I really appreciate it. Keep in touch. Take care.
All right. Bye.